Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The assault rifle category here in Warzone right now is insanely competitive because of the various buffs and nerfs that they've been doing as of late. We've got a ton of different potential options for the best of the best, but today I wanted to try my best to narrow down to the top 5 best rifle loadouts you should be running right now. To start things off though, we got to break down some stats here on True Game Data. As always, huge shout out to Tony for putting in the work getting us all this information, because narrowing it down to a top 5 here genuinely is difficult. To say this is definitively 5 and 5 is definitively better than an honorable mention, 4 is definitively better than 5, so on and so forth. But we got 9 pretty solid rifles here from BO6 and MW3. Unfortunately, MW2 rifles, just not really it. We got the Model L, the Krig, the Goblin, the Cypher, the AMES, the AK, the SVA, the MTZ, and the Holger. When we go ahead, we look at 300 health combination shot TTK for the most accurate stat graph here. There's a lot to dissect. The first thing I do want to look at ultimately is our 3 MW3 weapons. For instance, the SVA, our hot pink line here, essentially, it's super competitive up through about 44 meters. It does drop off pretty harshly beyond 36 though. You can extend that out some with certain attachments, suppressors, high grain of barrel, you know. However, beyond that, it falls off really hard over long range, and for that reason the versatility is just lacking there compared to some of the other rifles here. The Holger, the sort of light blue line here, is honestly super competitive throughout. It's a little bit slower over long range, but it's not a huge difference. It is really limited by its magazine capacity though, and at the end of the day it still does have that MW3 weapon feel, so I just don't think that one is quite there for the top 5. The MTZ would be our last option here, sort of this green yellow line. We've actually talked about this in previous videos. Like, this is a very viable competitive option. Again, it does drop off a little bit early, and that's just something that doesn't happen with these other BO6 rifles, which might knock it down to that sort of honorable mention. Definitely up there with some of the better options in the game and very close throughout. But truly, I think the top 5 is going to consist of basically just Black Ops 6 weapons. That is the meta. It's pretty apparent that that's going to be the case for the foreseeable future, you know. But here we got 6 options now, so now we just have to narrow it down a little bit more. You got the AK, our white line, which just has an insane TTK at every single range with just a little bit more recoil, but that's something you can manage by using Gunfighter, going all in on control, and I think that's a mainstay. The AMES is a little bit slower up close, but then so reliable over long range, especially when you get to the really far long range there, and it's super low recoil as well. The Cypher may be the most versatile gun in the game, just super consistent throughout and can be used in a multitude of engagements there. The Goblin, crazy TTK as well if you're able to spam it at that max fire rate or consistently close to that max fire rate. The Krig, again, just super competitive throughout. It is fast to kill up close and especially in the mid-range. A little bit of weird recoil, but again, not something you can't learn to overcome. The Model L is just falling a little bit flat here and there. It's certainly close, right? But I just think there are maybe a few more consistent options than it currently. So that would leave us with the Krig, the Goblin, the Cypher, the AMES, and the AK. Now let's jump into the game, break down the setups for all of these weapons. As we do so, of course, if you enjoy the video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, you want to guarantee that every single day you are in the know for everything going on in COD, feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. So first up here at number 5, I've got the Krig, mainly just because of that kind of awkward recoil pattern. It does feel a little bit funky as you continue to spray and pray, right? The first few shots are going to be a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more easy to predict, but then it does bounce around a little bit, which can be awkward for some players. Now, it's not something you can't master. If you spend some time in the firing range or in live action, really just focusing on learning that recoil, it's absolutely something you can start to memorize and build into your muscle memory. It's just a little bit more obnoxious than several other guns in the game, but if you can land shots with this thing, I mean, it is going to fry. The control here is really the only main drawback. It's got good mobility, it's got great TTK as we saw, so it's rocking pretty much everywhere but that control department. I am using a gunfighter build in this case. For the optic, use whatever you want, whether it's a 2x, a 3x, a reflex, a red dot. There are so many different good options here depending on your preference. Now, I like the suppressor, but if you do want max control, obviously go for the compensator. That'll help out some with the vertical and make it a little bit easier to predict. Reinforced barrel here, extending our range and our velocity. We have a 978 velocity. That hit scan range is going to be fantastic. And the base damage range, 61 meters, is also great as well. For the underbarrel here, you can go a couple of routes. If you're more of an aggressive player, I like Ranger a lot here just for some horizontal control, so the weapon's easier, but then also some sprinting movement speed. If you just want max control, go for the vertical foregrip. With this and the compensator on there, it's going to make recoil a whole lot easier to predict. For extended mag 2 here, it's actually a 70 rounder. Typically extended 2 is like a 50 or a a 60. Rarely do we get something as large as 70, so that's fantastic, of course. Might as well go for some mobility here with gunfighter. I mean, you're not getting a ton out of this, but in certain one-off situations, it could be advantageous to have an ergonomic or a quick draw on here for a better ADS or a slide to fire there. Balanced stock helping out that strafe is pretty practical in a lot of situations. The other general movement and whatnot, you might not notice as much on a long-range rifle, but it's still something, right? You got the attachments, might as well go for it. Then recoil springs, even more recoil help, of course. So this is definitely going to make the weapon a lot easier across the board with this general setup, which really does help circumvent that recoil and make this gun just more reliable across the board. Definitely a fantastic choice. Next up at number 4, I've got the Goblin. I do think there's an argument maybe for the Krig at number 4, the Goblin at 5 if you're not a fan of semi-auto guns. Obviously, this one is a very high skill gap weapon. However, the reward is so much greater than everything else here on the list, right? If you can just spam this gun fast and stay on target, few things are going to be able to challenge this in a gunfight, right? Again, for optic here, it's largely preference. I especially like the Willis 3 times and the 2 times on semi-auto guns, just for the long range, engagements there, but truly it is a matter of preference, right? Again, I like the suppressor just to stay off the map, but if you do want more control, you notice that the recoil is a little bit awkward as you are spamming it fast, just simply switch over to the compensator. You'll be good there. Obviously, you're just going to show up on the radar. We've got reinforced barrel here as well, a 943 velocity, sufficient, and then a 54 effective damage range there. 54 meters is going to be fantastic as well. Now, I do use rapid fire on here because it's not going to hurt your range and velocity like it does on a lot of full auto guns. It just hurts your control here, which obviously if you're not comfortable with, just switch over to that compensator as mentioned. But we up the TTK potential even more, and then since we're going to burn through ammo as fast as we possibly can, the 50 rounder on extended 2, that should be more than enough, especially for a semi-auto gun. You're in control of how fast you burn through this, of course, so you should be plenty aware of how close you are to having to reload in a gunfight. But yeah, high skill gap, but also such a high reward if you know what you're doing with this gun. And my number 3, I've got the AK. Again, the TTK just being so insanely fast here. The only problem being its recoil. A little bit more difficult to control this thing. So a gunfighter build, as I mentioned, we were talking on the graph, this just makes the gun a lot more predictable and easy to use because you can focus so much on control, but still get positives elsewhere as well. So we got, again, the Jason Armory 2 times, in this case 3 times. I like the Oturo red dot. I've been using that quite a bit. I also like the Volsky reflex as well. There's certainly plenty of options here for sure. Compensator, straight up better vertical control, very straightforward. Vertical foregrip, straight up better horizontal control, so we're attacking both of those. Then I also go for recoil springs as well. So the most control that we can get out of a setup is applied to this AK, which makes it a whole lot more predictable than just having 2 of these or having 1 of these in a suppressor or something, right? I do have reinforced on here as well. A 996 velocity is fantastic. A 70 meter effective damage range is pretty insane as well. We got extended 2 in this case. This is a 50. If you want to upgrade to extended 3, it gives you 10 extra bullets, but it'll be a little bit slower. So that's just simply a matter of preference. Do you value those 10 extra shots, or do you value the better mobility? Kind of probably depends on which map you're playing as well, for what it's worth. And then again, just because it's nice to have some movement here, ergonomic rear grip for the better slide to fire and ADS, and then balanced stock for the better strafe and general movement speed on there too. Takes some time to get used to it, but if you can master this gun, it's a beast. And number 2, I've got the AMES. Just such a straightforward rifle. As we saw, its TTK, especially over range, is super competitive, and it being so easy to use means that you're gonna be able to achieve that really competitive TTK realistically in game and not just on the graph like what we have with some other weapons here and there, right? In this case, I'm going for the Oturo red dot. Again, just matter of preference here, right? Suppressor, I don't really feel the need for the extra control, but if you're still struggling to hit some shots, never a bad idea to try out the compensator and just see if that helps out your gameplay a little bit more. Reinforced again, range of velocity, 931 velocity, 55 meter effective damage range. That's going to work great for all types of engagements. Ranger foregrip here, again, just because the control not being super crazy, I don't feel like I have to go all in on vertical, and I can go through and get some better sprinting movement speed to make the weapon a bit more versatile with Ranger foregrip on there. And then extended 2 in this case will be a 60. That's the max option here, so of course we're rocking that for all squad sizes. And then lastly here, number 1, the Cypher. Truly just one build here doesn't do this gun justice because there's so many ways you can build it. Obviously, we've talked about several ones in the past. You can rock sniper support with this thing, go iron sights, pair it with a car, pair it with a Morse, a cat, an LR762. You can rock gunfighter on this, go all out on the mobility with ergonomic rear grip and balanced stock and recoil springs. You can rock 5 attachments like we're doing here. All of these builds are going to be fantastic just because the Cypher is that straightforward and easy to use. Its TTK is competitive everywhere, and it's incredibly aggressive by default, which is fantastic. So here, I'm going for that Volsky reflex. Again, a matter of preference, right? Don't really feel the need for a compensator personally, so I rock the suppressor. Feel free to upgrade if you need that extra recoil control. Reinforced barrel, range of velocity, 972 velocity, and an almost 55-meter effective damage range, working great for all types of engagements. Ranger foregrip again for some mobility and some control. Then extended to, in this case, will be a 60 yet again, and obviously that's sufficient for solos, duos, trios, and quads. So truly, like I said at the start of the video, saying these are the definitive top 5 is tough because there are so many good choices in the rifle category right now, but that's a good thing. Having parity like this is fantastic because it means you can use less popular options but still find success, which is always good. Or you can just straight up go for the top tier options and find success there too. That said, that's gonna wrap things up for this video. If you found it helpful or if you simply enjoyed it, be sure to drop a like on it. And if you're new here, you want to guarantee that on a daily basis you're always in the know for everything going on in COD, this is the place to be. So feel free to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.